We are preparing to stream. Give us a few more seconds. Should come up here soon. All right. It looks like we are live. So we'll give everyone just one more second to dial in before we get started here. And also for me to check our audio. All right. Okay. Perfect. So we are coming off of a session from Mo, one of our developer evangelists. Thanks, Mo, for leading us off into this great presentation. Now we're going to transition to a great session on custom property editors. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Trailhead Live. Hope you're excited to join us today. My name is Heather Storm. I'm a developer program manager here at Salesforce, and I am joined by the effervescent Alex Edelstein. He is a senior director of product management here for automation and decisioning. And I won't introduce him too much more than that. He'll introduce himself here in a moment. But before we get into all of our great content, our quick forward-looking statement. Please make sure you make any and all purchasing decisions based on what's currently available on the platform and not any forward-looking statements that Alex or myself may make today. You can keep following us as well for updates. Please come check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Salesforce Developers. We really hope to engage with you all there, especially after the session. If you've still got questions, that is the place to go. And this session is being recorded and will be available here on the Trailhead Live channel in a few days. We're going to do some closed captioning, make sure it's all perfectly edited for you all, and then we'll post it on demand so you can continue to rewatch this content in case you want to dive even deeper. And then if you've got any questions during the session, you can use the chat either on the right side of the video or down below us. To continue to ask questions and also to connect with each other. We're hoping that this can be a collaborative chat. And at the end of our session, we're going to do a quick Q&A with Alex. So we will be making sure that we keep our eye down below on all those questions. So definitely keep asking them. We're not ignoring you. We're just going to get to them at the end. And with that, I am going to pass this off to Alex. So I will stop sharing. And Alex, we'll hand it off to you.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to try not to overwhelm you too much with my effervescence, because sometimes all of that bubbly, good-natured can just be a touch overwhelming. So, but well, we will try to keep the effervescence from overdoing things. Let's see. I am trying to share the screen here, and it just gave me an unexpected security warning. So hang on a second.
No problem. We're just proving we're truly are live today.
Yeah. That was one click further I should have gone in the testing.
Well, while you're figuring that out, we are already all here in the chat with y'all. We can see that there are about, it looks like 10 of you hanging out with us. So if you've got any questions that you already know you want to ask about custom property editors, go ahead and put them in the chat. We're definitely paying attention, and we're excited to be here this morning.
Okay, now it's telling, okay, we'll not be able to record. Okay, we don't need to record, so that's fine. All right, I think we're good. I think I can now, share. So let me try again.
Perfect.
All right.
All right, it's looking awesome. We can see your slides. Good to go.
Okay, so custom property editors is new technology that has some very powerful applications. And it's really designed to add property editors to two things: invocable actions, which are apex classes that you can surface as declarative building blocks in Flow Builder and other builders, and also Lightning Web Components. This is like a very pioneering thing for Lightning Web Components, because until now, if you dropped a Lightning Web Component in a container, you did not have this full ability to give your users a highly usable experience. Now, this is technically beta in summer 20, but it actually is, in my opinion, for all intents and purposes, complete. The only thing we haven't quite completed is some referential integrity checking to make sure that if you package one of these components and don't package its custom property editor, then you get the appropriate warnings. So this stuff is really ready, really in good shape and ready to go. So what does a property editor do? Here we have on the left a typical flow action. And this flow action, when you click on it, you see the property editor that's on the right. And the property editor that's on the right, this is the traditional property editor that we have always generated inside of Flow Builder. And its strength is that you don't have to do anything to get it to show up. It is algorithmically generated from the outer shape of your action or your screen component. The downside, though, is that it's not the friendliest thing in the world. You can see it's sort of this long list of identical looking combo boxes. And that works okay when you're dealing with the simple action. Here's an action, for example, that just takes a single input. It's a URL. Pretty clear here what you need to do. Paste a URL in to this one text field. But over here on the right is an example of a component called dependent pick lists. And you can see that it's got so many attributes that it can be quite intimidating to look at it as a full general property editor. So to enable the user to have a better experience, we have enabled custom property editors. And what you see here is the difference that can have. So this is a particular action. This is an existing action that can be installed as a flow extension that allows you, it gives you improved email sending capability, allows you to send rich email. And on the left is the traditional auto-generated custom property editor. And on the right, is the auto-generated standard property editor on the left. The custom property editor is on the right. So this is exactly the same screen reached in exactly the same way. But the current version of this send rich email extension will produce the appearance that you see here. And in fact, let's go take a look. And let me go over here. So here, for example, this is a flow with that send rich email action. And if I double click on it, you can see that I've got this sophisticated solution here. It's got searching, it's got accordions, it's got conditional field visibility. Basically, it's tapping into a lot of the power of LWC, of Lightning Web Components. And in fact, it even lets you switch between standard email and mass email. Doing this without a custom, I mean, frankly, it still has a sort of large number of things that you can do here. But it's a lot friendlier than the non-custom property editor appearance. So what I'm going to do is talk a little about how to build these and how to make them work. So let's start with what you just saw. What you just saw was a Lightning Web Component custom property editor that is linked to an underlying flow action that uses an invocable action framework to take an Apex class and surface it as a declarative action, a declarative building block in flow. So the basic way you create that linkage is you go into that Apex class. It's already going to have this invocable method annotation. That invocable method annotation, that's what takes an Apex class, an ordinary everyday Apex class, and turns it into a declarative building block. If you're not familiar with that, it's worth checking out because it's tremendously powerful. So what we've added here is this configuration editor property, and it's referencing a Lightning Web component in the common namespace. And so this is the key here. When you add this to the invocable action, when Flow Builder opens it up and tries to open that property editor, they will see this and try and load this invocable action. And when you add this annotation, what you're doing is you're essentially activating an interface. We'll talk about this interface that causes information to flow from Flow Builder to your LWC so that your LWC has the necessary context. Now, when you're adding, what about when you want to add a custom property editor to a Flow screen component? This is a little it can be a little confusing because it's an LWC on top of another LWC in an unconventional way. What we have here is a component that I'll demo in a second called Quick Choice. It's basically an improved pick list and radio button group component that you can put on a flow screen. And Quick Choice is an LWC, but when you click on it, this is the traditional property editor right here, and there's not even enough room. You can see the scroll bar. There's a lot more there. Now let's take a look. And what I'll do first is, let's go right here. So here we have Quick Choice, and here's the custom property editor. So in this case, it's appearing in Screen Builder inside of Flow Builder. And you can see that it gives you radio button groups here, and then based on the radio button group, the appropriate fields will show up. So there's a visual card mode here. And if we want to take a look at that, let's see kind of what this looks like. So what you see here is 3 different Quick Choice instances, and let's run this. And here is the flow screen. And so you can see here you have this visual card mode where I've even uploaded pictures of my cat, and I'm using them as icons in this nice picker mode. Here's a more conventional pick list. And here is a radio button group that's showing case statuses. So that's what it looks like at runtime. And then back here in Flow Builder, here's the custom friendly UI that's being used to let the user specify all of the characteristics that they want to specify. All right, so when you're connecting a custom property editor to a Lightning Web component in a role of a Flow screen component, then you do that here inside the meta XML file. So you're already going to be familiar with this because this is how you take an ordinary everyday Lightning Web component and surface it as something that you can drag into a Flow screen. So you can see here that a target config section has been added for a target of Lightning Flow screen. That's all existing. That doesn't actually have anything to do with the custom property editor. But here, once again, you see that there is a configuration editor that lets you point at the particular LWC that you want to serve as the CPE, the custom property editor. All right, so let's walk through that Quick Choice example that you just saw in a little more detail and show you how you actually create this. So essentially you start our recommended way of starting this is with SFDX, VS Code, and sort of the state-of-the-art Salesforce development environment. That's how this example is going to go. What you're seeing here is the project for this flow screen component. So it's got the original Quick Choice FSC code. That's the code that actually is going to generate the pick list at runtime or the visual picker. That's the original base functionality. What we do is we add a second new LWC. I'm tacking on CPE as a suffix. That's just a convention I use. So you've got them in the same project. Now, if you look at the meta file for the CPE component, you're not going to see the target and the target config. You don't normally expose the CPE to flow. That's going to just confuse people. The CPE is really goes through the base component that you're using, the Quick Choice FSC component. So you don't want both of these that are in your project to show up to a user. You just want Quick Choice to show up. And so let me just give you an example of that. So Quick Choice FSC is showing up right here for the user. We don't want the custom property editor to also show up here as well. And that's why we're not going to add all of the target and the target config stuff to the custom property editor. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the interface and what data flows as a result of turning on this connectivity. The first thing I'm going to talk about is an attribute called BuilderContext. So what I'm doing in my custom property editor is I am creating a getter and a setter for this BuilderContext attribute. That is one of several attributes in this interface, and Flow Builder will set data into these attributes when it instantiates this custom property editor. And let's see, we can let me just show it to you in a little bit of a more clear. All right, just put this over here. Oh, you know what? I know why it's not going to let me do that until I do this. I apologize. I usually work with a slightly different video solution. Okay, so here's that same project. Here's the CPE. And here in my JavaScript, you can see I've got my getter and my setter for BuilderContext. So what is BuilderContext? What is BuilderContext giving us? It gives you a lot of information. It actually gives you far more information than you can make use of. BuilderContext passes the entire flow metadata. It passes, and by the entire flow metadata, if you go to the metadata API developer guide and look up flow metadata, you're going to see that it's got all of these things. It's got record creates, it's got screens, it's got stages and old legacy Apex plugin sections. All of this data structure, the entire metadata, is actually passed to the CPE. Now, it turns out that at least today, you only need to use a very little bit of that. And we'll talk about what's actually useful. So 90% or so, you can just ignore. This is read only, so you can't overwrite any of this. You wouldn't want to. Unless you're trying to make certain very specific changes that we'll touch upon. So the main purpose of BuilderContext, the main value it has to your custom property editor, is to tell you what the inputs are on the underlying action or screen component. It's also to give you variable information. So that's builder context. Input variables is another piece of context that gets passed down. Input variables are actual values. So these are the values that users want to have told you they want to pass into your underlying screen component or action when it runs. So let's look at the life cycle of these input variables. Suppose that we're in that send rich email custom property editor, we're in Flow Builder, and the user types Brightbank customer support into this field. This is the sender display name field. Now this field corresponds to one of the input attributes, one of the input variables on the underlying invocable action. So at runtime, this action is going to get called, and these values are going to get populated with any values that the user has provided. So the user is saying, hey, when you run this flow, I want Brightbank customer support to get passed in to be the sender display name. So that's great. Now mechanically, in order for Flow Builder to find out that, because remember the user, the CPE, that's your CPE HTML. Flow Builder